Hello, and welcome to this week's program of the Rotary E-Club of Silicon Valley. My name is Farheen, and I thank you all so much for being here with us today. Each week, we connect with and hear from speakers who usually have a message focused on our love for innovation, entrepreneurship, and education. Today, we have a wonderful presentation from Pamela Stokes Eggleston, who is the co-founder of Retreat to Spirit and an adjunct professor / yoga therapy clinic supervisor at the Maryland University of Integrative Health. She is a certified yoga therapist and meditation teacher with specialized training in plant-based nutrition, cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia, and trauma-informed yoga to work with service members, veterans, their caregivers, and insomnia sufferers. Today, she will be discussing her organization, Retreat to Spirit. With that said, Pamela, please take it away.
Thank you so much, Farheen, and welcome to everyone who's joining live and who will see this recording. I'm so happy to talk about Retreat to Spirit. Thank you so much. So I will just dive right in and talk about what we do. And you can see that in the title, Retreats, Events, Experiences. And so I'm going to kind of go over like how we came to be. And so you can see me there. I'm with the head wrap. And my business partner, Amina Naru, is in the gray shirt on the left to me. So we are two women with a deep passion to assist in this paradigm shift that we believe we're feeling even prior to COVID, but now ever so more as we kind of move to post-COVID that's taking place on the planet. Spiritual evolution is rapidly awakening humankind, and the necessary tools, education, and compassionate and empathetic spaces for growth are critical. We invite you to explore Retreat to Spirit to enhance your livelihood, to include joy, peace, and happiness. So where are we coming from? So we are, as Farheen mentioned earlier, the former co-executive directors of the Yoga Service Council, and we currently serve on the board of Accessible Yoga, which is really yoga for everyone. We are immersed in trauma-informed yoga. Amina working in the jails, I work with veterans, as was mentioned before. And so in our collective work, we're really focused on what the subtle, energetic, and more soul-inspired aspects of yoga, compassion, compassionate leadership, and wellness are that we can address. And so this is one of our favorite quotes from Stacey Abrams. We define what your beliefs of leadership looks like. And we believe that everyone is a leader. So we have this sort of construct of what we think leaders should be in terms of corporations and businesses and hierarchy. And we believe that everyone's a leader. And this is a picture of me, Amina, and some friends where we met in 2015 at the Omega Institute. And this is where our connection was solidified. Like we are kindred spirits. You've heard these things like twin flames and all of this kind of language. You know, Mina often jokes to my husband and says, you know, I'm her work wife. I'm her work wife. And we kind of really connected on that level. So it's more than friends. It was just an energetic connection. And so this is our basic mission, to focus on the subtle, energetic, soul-inspired aspects of yoga. We talk about shared mentorship, self-care, and community care and service, which is a big deal for you guys as well. And so this is some of the programming that we have. Project-based mentoring group, which we're currently running, retreat experiences, community service work, and self-care projects. So this is another one of our favorite quotes. You may live in the world as it is, but you can still work to create the world as it should be, by Michelle Obama, who I've had the pleasure of meeting. I'm just really blessed to have met her, and she is that way in real life, if you're wondering. So these pictures, okay, this is from our mentorship program, which we're currently running. We're actually in week 5. And this is from one of our mentees who's she's in the program and she has her highlighters. We have a workbook. It's really actually an intense mentorship program. You know, when we create these things and we want to serve people who are working in the wellness space, it's very, interesting to talk to people, and then we realize, like, my type A self, how much am I putting into it? That part of it is the part we have to do, but the picture on the right, my right, is what I really like to do, and that's kind of teach, get into it, really focus on the people, and get to know the community, like really energetically tapping into the community. And that's a picture actually from a workshop we did in Costa Rica in January, which is lovely. And they had great COVID protocols, by the way. So this is a picture, or these are pictures of us at Omega in our capacity as executive directors. So I just thought I would just do a throwback here, just furthering our connection. We're working in the cafe there. I don't know if anyone's been to Rhinebeck, New York, but it's a lovely place, and they're opening back up in August. So we're there working. Somebody did a sneak by and took that picture of us. They're like, we're really intent. And people just were like, wanted to be around us. They're like, man, your energy is really palpable. And so we're kind of in the back yoga room there. You can see the blankets and all the props there as we're seated on the picture on the right. This is us actually, okay, I'm sorry. This is us actually working on a program that we created specifically for Black women. So our friend there is Nazaha Amin, and we are at her house because this is what it is, you know, in these times when you're an entrepreneur and you have businesses. And, you know, we all were like, okay, before the vaccine, let's take your temperature and all of these things, you know, do you have the virus? Very, you know, protective, because my friend Nazaha is also a yoga therapist, and she works at Johns Hopkins and does work there. So she's really amazing. So we put this program together specifically for Black women who are stressed. She's in Baltimore. She works with mothers who are homicide, who have had to bury children, sons and daughters, really just hard and arduous work, and using the tools of yoga to help them. So she does a lot of amazing work with her nonprofit. But this is an example of partnership. You know, Amina and I are always talking about how we can collaborate and cultivate partnerships. And when I reached out to Farheen again, I was like, this is a partnership, right? Like this is, you know, I want to get more involved with the Rotary, and how do I do that? And she's been very, you know, amenable. And when Nan collectively got us together, initially, it's just been wonderful. And so I love to be able to tap back in to people and be able to use those connections in that way. So that's just an example. So a quick intriguing facts. Retreat to Spirit was created in 2018, and that was before we took the helm of executive directors. We've served over 700 people. Maybe it's more than that, I don't know. And like I said earlier, we met at the Omega Institute in 2015. This is somebody that follows us literally around the country. Her name is Elizabeth, and she is amazing. She's the yoga therapist in Detroit. And no, in Flint, they still don't have running water. They still don't have these kinds of things. And she's working with children there. She also works part-time for a news station there. So doesn't she look like she'd be on the news delivering like, I mean, she just has, I don't know what that is. She's just gorgeous. And she met Amina in St. Louis when we were doing work with conferences. And she's just been really amazing. And I think, you know, this kind of self-love is really helpful to us. This is us in Costa Rica. So you can see how happy we are because I escaped. This was in January, and we were like, oh my God, I can't believe we actually can travel. And yes, we had to get tested and do all the things, but when we got there, man, it was amazing. Everyone was masked. They had a doctor and nurse on staff. You had to take random tests, you know, to make sure that they had no COVID. We had to take a test leaving because we left when, I guess it was after the inauguration. So that, you know, by that time, I guess the CDC had instituted tests coming back. I was just happy there. I was just really, it was amazing. They did great protocols, and we had a lovely 2 weeks there. We stayed extra for 2 weeks. So this is the Pacific side of Costa Rica. So if anyone has been to Costa Rica on, I guess, the Caribbean side, this is the Pacific Ocean. And that is from the, I guess, the main hall space. It was amazing. This picture on the left is we went to a neighboring spot that was COVID regulated and had food. And it was amazing. And I was happy because everything was fresh, the papaya, and just everything was just so amazing. And this was our downtime day. So it was lovely to have that. This is us doing our sacred fire ceremony. And we actually had this one evening, and this lady, lovely lady, I'm actually smudging her. So if you know anything about like sage and all the, Native Americans using sage and feathers or Palo Santo. We kind of had this whole space, which is behind those trees overlooking the beach, to set up candles and a fire. And we kind of just released what in 2020, right, was no longer serving us. People released COVID, people releasing whatever, all the drama and stress that we had from 2020, because this was in mid-January, and we kind of wrote it down and put it in the fire, right? And just said, we're just going to burn that off. So that was part of what we did in that time. Okay, so we actually have a 3-month program that I mentioned. We actually have some things coming up as well this year in Omega and our Black women training. So let me see here. I don't know if this was I actually had some more photos that I wanted to share, but I think this is it. So I want to tell you this story about a revelation that somebody had. I want to go back to this. And this person is Laura. When you build relationships and you cultivate them, then people tend to reach out to you and stay connected. And so she's actually in our mentorship program, but she was like, oh my God, your energy was so great. She decided to join us. And the way that we do our business, or we run our business, is really about collaborative efforts. We're not like these teachers or this, whatever, business owners kind of like, oh, we're in charge or whatever. No, it's a community that you build. And that's where the community care piece comes in that I alluded to earlier. This whole community of people who want something a little bit more, who know that the standard way of doing things is no longer working. I feel like since we've had time to think and see some horrific things in 2020 and deal with the horrific aspects of racism, deal with the horrific aspects of COVID, as we keep India in our prayers at this moment. We have had time to spend really with ourselves, whether we wanted to or not, and employ self-inquiry and self-reflection in a way that hopefully informs our transition moving from the normal status quo, what we were comfortable in as it relates to our chaos. So a lot of people are comfortable in that chaos and are stressed and know that they desire something more, and they may not know what that purpose or passion is. And so one of the things I love from my favorite book in the world, among many, is from The Alchemist. Paulo Coelho talks to personal legend. What is your personal legend? And this was the kind of energy that we infused in this program in Costa Rica. So I'll just pause there. You can find us, we're online, you can find us all those other places, but yeah, I'll stop there.
Pamela, thank you so much for your absolutely wonderful presentation. I loved all of the pictures. And before we get into the question and answers, I just wanted to quickly introduce the other members on the call. So when I say your name, please wave. So we have our Bay Area members, Cecilia and Rushton. We have Jens in Germany. And finally, we have our future E-Club member, Afra in San Ramon. So Afra, you had the first question. Go on ahead.
Well, first, thank you for that, for bringing such a calming energy. Even through the digital era, you can still feel positive energy and grounding energy. So thank you for that. So my question is about connecting people. You said you're in the Maryland area, and I have a friend who's actually a Rotarian as well and a counselor. And I'm wondering, what are your ways of getting people connected to this work that you're doing and infusing this kind of grounding energy into things like therapy, especially in spaces? This friend works with the courts in DC and mentally ill, like making the determination if a person's like mentally fit to stand trial or something. Wow. So how do you connect in spaces that are not very soul inspired and then, infuse that?
That's a great question. Afra, is that how you say your name?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yes. That's a great question. I think it has been a difficult challenge to connect yoga, this kind of woo-woo thing, to people who really, really need it. People in the DC courts, I have friends that work there that need it. And I think that the world is slowly coming around to employ meditation in spaces. I know the federal government here in the DC metropolitan area actually has contracts for folks to come in and do meditation. I have a friend who is on Capitol Hill providing yoga to congressmen and senators. I mean, even Nancy Pelosi, if you can believe it. So it's slow. It's a slow, and he just, you know, he hasn't been doing it that long. So it's really about the messaging. How do I get out that I'm a yoga therapist? And what even is a yoga therapist, right? As people would ask, as that it relates to being a yoga teacher. How do we get the messaging out? And sometimes it's very slow. It's one person at a time. Sometimes it's connecting with the Rotary Club, which I plan to do here in the DMV area. Sometimes it's with other people who are like-minded. You know, maybe there's an herbalist that I can connect with. Maybe there's somebody doing acupuncture, or like I told Farheen earlier, I went to a chiropractor and she was like, wait, what do you do? You know, and you know anatomy. And so that's how organically, right, these conversations start happening, and people want to use your skills. So when I started this yoga journey over 20 years ago, there was nobody. I mean, I could barely get in the door at the VA, you know, like, you know, even though I had relationships, right? I had those connections. I had the relationships. My husband's a wounded warrior. I still couldn't do it because it was woo-woo, or there were people there who were moving from, I'll say, a space of lack. So often, and I'll say pre-COVID, and some people are trying to shake this as we move into post-COVID, we're working in silos, and there are people doing the work that we can say, oh, there's somebody that's actually doing meditation for incarcerated women. That's not my bag. So let me find somebody that I can refer them to, you know, that kind of thing, and sharing and knowing that we're only in a space of abundance and there is no lack. And that this whole idea of what wellness is can grow. Doctors are starting to get on board by, you know, becoming functional physicians, where they use complementary tools as well as traditional allopathic medicine. I mean, it's slowly happening, but it is happening. And that was a long way around your question, but I hope I answered it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Well, thank you so much for the presentation. For me, one of the things that really stood out from your talk was a particular line, and it was, "We believe everyone is a leader." And I think about that from the perspective of an educator, right? And I look at students and I think, okay, there are students who don't know they have leadership within them.
Mm-hmm.
There are students who think they have leadership but haven't learned the humility to be good leaders, right? And so, you know, are there this range of people that you find the work you do is especially helpful for developing leadership?
So by range, do you mean like the different types of people you just described, like some people on the cusp, or some people don't even think they are? Yeah, I think that's it. I mean, when I say what I just said, and I'm glad you picked up on that, people are like, what? Because if you think, okay, leaders are, Martin Luther King was a leader, you know, or, you know, Gandhi was a leader, or you think like that, you know, you think, you know, it's really somebody who's a CEO is a leader. But if you're not the CEO of your own life, then how can you go out and be a leader to anyone else? Children kind of know, they kind of learn from how adults are modeled. And like the older you get, and particularly in our society, how it's built, even though I think that that's crumbling, I think COVID has just blown everything out of the water. That, you know, if something is modeled, then they'll pick up on it. And so it's really how much space, from a space of compassion, can we give people, students, persons who are in learning environments, to be able to explore that for themselves? And what are the structures around that? So often, if you're in a regular corporate job, which I've come from, that structure is this. It's just a pressure. It's this kind of thing, which is why it didn't work for me in many different ways. I mean, I kind of, you know, was always being either moved out, I'll say, by the universe, or I left because it just wasn't working. I am this, and the structures are this. And So I had to just own up to that. And it took me a while to realize that, because, both of my parents worked in the government, and I'm, you just want to fit in the boxes. You want to be normal. And I remember my dad telling me, yeah, you're not, this isn't for you, because, parents know their children. And I'm like, what do you mean? Wes is over here. He's been at a job for 20 years. That's him. You and your sister, no. My sister's an artist. Nobody, she can't, she's doing things, the sign of the times, because that's what artists do. And that's what creative, compassionate leaders do. That is a part of creation. The CEO of LinkedIn, and I used to do meditations for the LinkedIn office here in DC for a while. You know what time that meditation was, that session? It was at 10 o'clock. Most companies don't do that. Most companies, like the one down the street, it was an accounting firm that I'm not going to mention, did it during lunch hour. So what does that mean? That means I have to take my personal time to do something that a company's supposed to offer me. Those folks either came to the 10 o'clock, 45-minute meditation, or they were on a call and they couldn't come. So it depended on who showed up that week, but they were able to take time. He paid his staff to go to meditation. And the productivity didn't stop. And matter of fact, it increased. Wow. That's compassionate leadership. And that's a man that has his own practice. As Amin and I said, we always talk about what is your contemplative work that you're doing so that you can be a compassionate leader, so you can work in this space. So you have to walk the walk. That was a long way of answering that. I'm kind of verbose today. I'm trying to... Are we good? Okay.
You're doing great. You're doing great.
Okay.
Thank you. I appreciate that answer a lot. So I have a question for you. You mentioned, again, physician. So I am a budding doctor. I'm going to medical school in a few months. And so what advice do you have for doctors who are interested in yoga and meditation, and how they can potentially integrate that into their practice?
I would love it. And I know a lot of medical programs, or even most, but I think this is changing, don't have that much time for nutrition, don't have that much time for other programs, like yoga, like acupuncture, like we spoke to, like Tai Chi, or any type of movement, somatic movement that would help the body. I would love to see medical programs that would give a little bit more time to that, because I feel like what you're putting in your body, what you ingest, eat, and energetically is so important. It's so important to how we show up as it relates to stress, how we show up with our family, how we show up with our friends. And I would just like to see that. And if it's not there for you, Farheen, then I would love it if you just did something extra. Like, I know this doctor in Bethesda, Maryland, he had to do extra nutrition study. He had to do extra because, and he's been a doctor for a while, so it was not in his program. And he said, I had to go somewhere and get a nutrition education, because I only had this one semester or whatever of this education. And he took some yoga courses. He was also practicing himself. So he did some things around Tai Chi himself and nutrition, and he embodied that. So we talk about in yoga a lot, embodiment. So it'd be great if these doctors could embody what they're helping their patients realize for themselves.
Thank you. Yes, medical school is very stressful. And so that is definitely something that I want to keep in the back of my mind of how can I de-stress, and definitely meditation, yoga. We know, like there's studies that show that the more you do it, the less stressed you are. So I definitely need to consider and look into programs.
Yeah, and Rushton said, and Farheen is an accomplished international researcher as well. I felt like I wanted to read that.
Thank you. And then we have one more question from Afra. Go ahead.
Okay.
So kind of in the same vein of Farheen's question and Rushton's, I'm an educator as well. And you mentioned your work with mothers who've lost sons to trauma, to violence. You've talked about working with incarcerated women. So some of the conversations in education that come up in our area is restorative justice.
Yes.
And nonviolent communication and different ways of healing between groups that have been at odds or in conflict. I'm wondering if you do any work in those groups to kind of inform more compassionate healing between groups that have been in conflict.
Yes. I didn't set out years ago to do the work. The work found me. And it is arduous, and it has been particularly these past 3 years. I have been on so many Zoom kind of panels talking about restorative justice and social justice as it relates to yoga and what we can do to kind of move that energy, the stagnant energy that is negative through the body. I have a mentor, and her name is, and I'm going to get this book because I think it's important, these two books. One of them, and this is my favorite, she's a mentor of mine. And as I have a mentoring program, I need a mentor, right? Just like if you go to a therapist, they should be going to see therapy, right? This lady is my mentor, and this is one book, Restorative Yoga for Ethnic and Race-Based Stress and Trauma by Dr. Gail Parker. She is currently on the cover of Yoga Journal, the May and June Yoga Journal cover. She's amazing. She gave me a shout out in her book, but she has helped me take my yoga practice down. Sometimes you need one pose to really affect change. The other book is Healing Justice, Holistic Self-Care for Change Makers by Loretta Piles. And this is a good book as well for anybody that's interested. So I read a lot of these things. I know some of the people in the space, obviously. So it's really imperative as educators, however that lands, whoever you're educating, to do your own work. What does that look like? If you don't have your own practice, if you don't like whatever it is, some type of movement, hiking, belly dancing, something that creates a sense of presence. How can I be in this present moment and be fully alive in it? Often we're lamenting about what happened, what's gonna happen. We're never here now. So Ram Dass says, be here now. And if you're giving 100% to this space now, you can't be thinking about grocery lists. You can't be thinking about what happened 2 days ago. It's so that's a practice. And what helps us do that is mindfulness, is meditation. That's the first step. Breath. When I grew up and I used to be outside getting in trouble and stuff, my mother would say, calm down, take a deep breath. She didn't know that was yoga. Take a deep breath. Why? Because I had to focus on the breath. That's presence. We have language around that now. What we tell our children, what parents tell our children, and what we were told. And so I have to do that work because I am working with people who have had struggles with racism, sexism, gender and binary issues. I do a lot of work around that. So I have to do my own work. I have to always be in a state of constant improvement and self-reflection and curious about myself. Did that answer?
Yes, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Great. So seeing as we're just about out of time, Pamela, thank you very, very much for your wonderful presentation. Rotary members and guests, please make sure you fill out the attendance section and leave us a comment below. And so now I'm going to turn it back to you, Pamela, for your final words.
My final word is that if you don't have any type of contemplative practice, and it doesn't have to be yoga, but yoga is fantastic, then I would say start. And you don't have to go into a studio to do that. I know we're still in COVID, but we'll be post-COVID. There's plenty of Zoom, yoga. A lot of people, including myself, have had to pivot online. There's some things on YouTube that you could get started with. But start a yoga practice, start a meditation practice. That would be my last word.
Thank you very much, and we will see everyone else in a week. Bye-bye.